I'm Alex, 36 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the family's black sheep. Not because I did anything particularly wrong, at least, nothing I didn't try to fix, but because I chose a path that my parents didn't approve of. I'm a delivery driver. Nothing glamorous, nothing high status. I drive trucks, deliver packages, and I'm proud of it. But to my family, that's not enough. My older brother, Nathan, is the golden child. He works in finance, wears expensive suits, and married Mia, who's every bit as sharp and status conscious as my mother. Mom, a woman who prides herself on appearances and what others think, has made it abundantly clear for years that Nathan's life is what she expects from her children. My sister, who tends to keep her head down, mostly avoids the chaos, but even she seems to accept Mom's favoritism. Last weekend, something shifted. I had no intention of stirring up drama, but after months of hearing snide remarks about my dead-end job and watching Nathan slip further from the picture, no longer returning Mom's calls, dodging family events, I felt the need to step in. I showed up at Mom's house unannounced on a quiet Sunday afternoon. It was a risk, knowing how Mom tends to react when things don't go her way, but I was tired of watching her coddle Nathan while ignoring me. When I knocked, Mom answered the door immediately. The smile she tried to force vanished the second she saw me. "He's just a delivery driver, Alex," she said coldly before I even stepped inside. "What are you doing here?" I held her gaze steadily. "I came because I have questions. You've been acting like Nathan is perfect, but I've been hearing things about money, about family favors. It doesn't add up." Mom's eyes narrowed. "You don't belong here with your endless complaining. Nathan's doing fine, and that's all that matters." Before I could respond, Mia appeared from the living room. She looked me up and down like I was some inconvenience, like a guest who showed up wearing the wrong outfit. But then, unexpectedly, she reached out and grabbed my hand. I was taken aback. Her grip was tight, and I noticed her fingers trembling slightly. She glanced quickly at my phone, which was still in my hand, the screen showing a recent message notification. Her face changed, the icy mask cracked, and for a split second, I saw something like fear or guilt flicker across her eyes. Suddenly, the entire room fell silent. Mom stopped speaking mid-sentence. Nathan, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, finally looked up. "I'm Alex, 36 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the family's black sheep. Not because I did anything particularly wrong, at least, nothing I didn't try to fix, but because I chose a path that my parents didn't approve of. I'm a delivery driver. Nothing glamorous, nothing high status. I drive trucks, deliver packages, and I'm proud of it. But to my family, that's not enough. My older brother, Nathan, is the golden child. He works in finance, wears expensive suits, and married Mia, who's every bit as sharp and status conscious as my mother. Mom, a woman who prides herself on appearances and what others think, has made it abundantly clear for years that Nathan's life is what she expects from her children. My sister, who tends to keep her head down, mostly avoids the chaos, but even she seems to accept Mom's favoritism. Last weekend, something shifted. I had no intention of stirring up drama, but after months of hearing snide remarks about my dead-end job and watching Nathan slip further from the picture, no longer returning Mom's calls, dodging family events, I felt the need to step in. I showed up at Mom's house unannounced on a quiet Sunday afternoon. It was a risk, knowing how Mom tends to react when things don't go her way, but I was tired of watching her coddle Nathan while ignoring me. When I knocked, Mom answered the door immediately. The smile she tried to force vanished the second she saw me. "He's just a delivery driver, Alex," she said coldly before I even stepped inside. "What are you doing here?" I held her gaze steadily. "I came because I have questions. You've been acting like Nathan is perfect, but I've been hearing things about money, about family favors. It doesn't add up." Mom's eyes narrowed. "You don't belong here with your endless complaining. Nathan's doing fine, and that's all that matters." Before I could respond, Mia appeared from the living room. She looked me up and down like I was some inconvenience, like a guest who showed up wearing the wrong outfit. But then, unexpectedly, she reached out and grabbed my hand. I was taken aback. Her grip was tight, and I noticed her fingers trembling slightly. She glanced quickly at my phone, which was still in my hand, the screen showing a recent message notification. Her face changed, the icy mask cracked, and for a split second, I saw something like fear or guilt flicker across her eyes. Suddenly, the The entire room fell silent. Mom stopped speaking mid-sentence. Nathan, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, finally looked up. The room stayed frozen in that eerie silence, the kind where everyone knows something's about to break, but no one dares to be the first to speak. Mia's grip on my hand was surprisingly steady now, but her eyes flickered with a mix of fear and calculation. I could tell she was weighing her options, whether to protect her husband's lies or finally let the truth out. Mr. Grant cleared his throat, breaking the silence. I'll need access to the company records and financial statements. Nathan, if you could accompany me, please. Nathan stood up slowly, jaw tight, his usual confident smirk nowhere to be found. Of course, he muttered, grabbing his coat. Before leaving, he shot me a sharp look, the kind that said, "This isn't over, Alex." The second the door closed behind them, Mom let out a breath she'd been holding and turned to me, eyes blazing. "You've crossed a line." I shrugged. "No, Mom. You and Nathan crossed the line a long time ago." She stepped closer, voice low but venomous. "You think you can just waltz in here, dig through our family's business, and expose us? You're nothing. Just a delivery driver." "Funny," I said, "because it's exactly that nothing that's going to be the end of you." Mia still stood by the couch, looking anywhere but at me or Mom. After a long pause, she finally spoke, voice barely above a whisper. "Alex, there's more you don't know. Things that could ruin all of us." I raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." She hesitated, then sighed as if the weight of her secrets was too much to carry alone. "Nathan has been hiding debts, bad deals that went south. The company isn't as solid as everyone thinks. Mom's been covering for him, pretending everything's fine. But the creditors are coming." Mom's expression hardened. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "I know enough," I said, feeling my confidence build. "Enough to make sure you don't get away with it." The idea had been forming in my mind for weeks. What I'd do if I ever got the chance to confront them. Mom and Nathan had spent years belittling me, making me feel small. But now I had the leverage, and I wasn't going to waste it. I pulled my phone out again, unlocking it to a folder full of evidence. Copies of bank statements, texts, even some photos Nathan and Mia thought I'd never find. They were careless, too comfortable in their lies. I held the phone up so Mom could see. "Look at this. Loans taken out under fake names, money funneled through shady accounts. And guess who's been bailing them out? Me." Her face twisted in confusion and then fury. "You're lying." "No, Mom. I was the one who helped pay off those debts. When Nathan lost his first big client, I covered the bills so your precious company wouldn't crumble. But you never thanked me. You just called me a failure." Mia finally met my gaze. "Why are you doing this? You could have stayed quiet." "Because," I said, voice steady, "sometimes the black sheep is the only one who cares about what happens when the rest of you start to fall." The tension thickened. Mom stormed into the kitchen, slamming the door behind her. Mia sat down quietly, and for the first time, Nathan didn't seem invincible. Days passed with little communication. Mr. Grant came and went with stacks of paperwork, his presence a constant reminder that the family's house of cards was wobbling dangerously. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. At a family dinner, the first in months where everyone was forced to sit at the same table, I brought my own surprise. Midway through the meal, I casually slid a thick envelope across to Mom. "Here's a summary of the financial audit," I said, watching her eyes scan the pages. "It shows exactly where the money went." Mom's hands trembled as she flipped through the papers, her usual composure slipping. This is impossible." Nathan glanced at the envelope with a scowl. "Who gave you this?" I smiled. "Let's just say I have friends." Mia's expression darkened. "Alex, don't do this." But I wasn't done. "No, Mia. This has gone on for too long. You all acted like I was the problem because of my job, my choices. But while I was delivering packages, you were delivering lies." The room erupted into chaos. Mom shouted that I was betraying the family. Nathan accused me of trying to ruin everything he built. Mia tried to intervene, but was drowned out by the shouting. Then, just when I thought the storm would break apart the family, I reached into my bag and pulled out another piece of evidence. A recording I'd made during a private conversation between Nathan and one of the creditors. In it, Nathan was clearly panicked, promising impossible paybacks and blaming everyone else for the mess. I played it over the speakerphone. The room fell silent again. Faces turned pale. Mom's lips pressed tightly together. Nathan looked like he might explode. That night, I left the house feeling lighter than I had in years. I wasn't just the delivery driver anymore. I was the one holding the truth. The following week felt like standing on a cliff's edge, waiting to see if the ground would give out beneath me or beneath them. After the dinner, I expected at least one of them to reach out. A call, a message, some kind of attempt at damage control. But there was nothing, just silence. And silence from my family, especially Mom, wasn't just rare, it was unnatural. Mom always had to have the last word. If she wasn't controlling the narrative, she was seething behind the scenes, planning how to take it back. I figured they were regrouping, spinning a new version of events. That's how they worked. Deny, deflect, distract. But I had something they didn't: time and proof. You see, while they were busy ignoring me, I kept working, kept driving, kept delivering. Because unlike them, I don't crumble under pressure. I'd already been down. I knew how to get up again. One evening, after finishing my route early, I got a text from Mia. "Can we talk? Just the two of us. Please." I debated whether or not to respond. Mia had always walked a fine line, cold and performative in front of the family, but not always cruel. Still, I didn't trust her. Not completely. But I agreed to meet her anyway, at a little coffee shop across town. Public enough to avoid a scene, quiet enough for a serious conversation. She was already seated when I arrived, tapping her fingers against a paper cup, eyes darting toward the window like she expected someone to follow her. "You came," she said, barely above a whisper. "You asked," I replied, sitting down. There was a long pause before she spoke again. I didn't know the full extent of what Nathan was doing. I knew he was in trouble. Yes, I helped him hide some things. But I thought it was temporary. I thought he'd get out of it. "You thought," I repeated. "But when you saw how deep it was, you stayed silent." She looked down at her cup. I was scared. For him, or for yourself? That made her flinch. "I'm not proud of it," she admitted. "But I have something that might help you. Something I think you'll want to see." She reached into her bag and slid over a flash drive. "What is it?" I asked, not touching it yet. "Emails. Messages. Bank transfers. Things he never told Mom about. He made mistakes, big ones. And now, he's trying to pin it all on you." I stared at her. "What do you mean, pin it on me?" "He told Mom you blackmailed him," she said quietly. "Said you threatened to destroy the family business unless he gave you a cut. That you've been jealous for years and finally snapped." I didn't respond for a few seconds. The anger didn't even register anymore. It was disappointment, disgust, but not surprise. "That's the version they're going with?" I asked. She nodded. "And Mom believes him. Completely. She's even been talking to a lawyer." "Of course she has. She wants to stop you from leaking lies to the board, the auditors, anyone who'll listen." I took the flash drive and slipped it into my jacket. Then I guess it's time to make sure the truth isn't so easy to bury. The next part of my plan took time, but I knew what I had to do. And I knew just who to talk to. Mr. Grant, the auditor from the firm looking into Nathan's financial activity, had been careful not to pick sides at first. But once I sent him the documents from the flash drive, his tone changed. "This is more serious than I thought," he told me over the phone. "This isn't just bad accounting. This looks like intentional fraud." I didn't need to say much. The records spoke for themselves. Large, unexplained transfers. Fake invoices. Personal purchases labeled as business expenses. The timeline lined up exactly with when the company's financial health started to dip. Around the same time Mom started making excuses for Nathan's absence and spinning stories about how he was expanding the business. It wasn't expansion. It was a cover-up. Mr. Grant agreed to escalate the investigation, and I gave him permission to share my records with the other stakeholders. I didn't want to be silent anymore. I didn't care if Mom hated me. I didn't care if Nathan tried to smear my name. What mattered was accountability. And the truth. A week later, I was asked to attend a meeting, a formal one, with the company's internal review board. I wasn't an employee, but as a contributor to the investigation, they wanted me present. The meeting was held at the main office, the same place where I once helped load supplies when Nathan needed free labor. Back then, I'd do anything to be included, to be accepted. But now I was walking in as someone with leverage, someone with nothing to lose and everything to say. Nathan was already seated when I arrived, dressed to the nines, face blank. Mom sat beside him, stiff and silent, her eyes on me the moment I entered. The board members introduced themselves, then turned to me. You've brought forward some serious allegations, Mr. Carter, one of them said. Before we proceed, do you have anything else to add? I looked at Nathan, then at Mom, then back at the board. I'm not here to take anything from this company, I said, but I refuse to let my brother or anyone else use me as a scapegoat. What I shared with you is the truth, and if you want more, I have it. Nathan finally spoke. This is insane. He's lying. He's been trying to tear this family apart for years. Mom nodded. He's obsessed with making us look bad. I didn't respond. I simply opened my bag, pulled out a binder I'd prepared, and placed it gently on the table. Copies of everything. Labeled. Dated. Easy to read. Then prove I'm lying, I said calmly. The room was silent again. Because they couldn't. The meeting ran long, full of questions, timelines, and uncomfortable truths. And by the end, Nathan's mask had started to slip. He stumbled over his explanations, contradicted earlier statements, and struggled to explain why personal purchases had been marked as operational expenses. Mom stayed rigid, clinging to whatever story Nathan was feeding her. But even she couldn't deny the tension in the room. The way the board members shifted uncomfortably every time another lie came to light. After the meeting, I walked past her without saying a word. I didn't need to. The look on her face said it all, not regret, but resentment. It took another month for everything to fully unravel. Nathan tried, in those early days after the board meeting, to maintain control, calling in favors, spinning stories, even claiming the documents I submitted were fabricated. But the more he tried to resist, the more desperate he sounded. And desperation doesn't look good in front of investigators. The audit became a full internal review, and outside forensic accountants were brought in. They verified everything. The fake invoices, the wire transfers, the shell expenses masked as business growth. Worse still, the company wasn't as solvent as Mom had led everyone to believe. Under Nathan's mismanagement and her protection, the business had been quietly bleeding for years. The only reason it hadn't collapsed already was because of emergency loans taken out under misleading terms. Loans Mom had co-signed, using the house as collateral. She'd been willing to risk everything, even her home, to protect Nathan's image. And it was all slipping through her fingers now. The official board statement came on a Thursday afternoon. Nathan was removed from his position immediately. His financial records were flagged and passed on to the authorities. Charges of fraud, embezzlement, and falsification of corporate documents followed shortly after. I wasn't there when the police came to his office, but I heard from a friend on staff that he didn't say a word as they escorted him out. Mom still hadn't spoken to me. Not once. But that didn't mean she wasn't busy. Behind the scenes, she was working to salvage what she could, not of the business, but of her reputation. She sent messages to family members, neighbors, old friends. She called in every favor, painting herself as a woman betrayed by her son, a mother blindsided by his actions. But the truth had already gotten out, and I made sure it stayed out. I shared the evidence, publicly and quietly, with those who mattered. The truth didn't need embellishment. The facts spoke for themselves. She could spin her stories, but she couldn't erase the paper trail. Eventually, the house went up for sale. Quietly, with no fanfare. I drove by once, not out of spite, but curiosity. The blinds were drawn, the yard overgrown. A for sale sign stood crooked at the edge of the lawn. The same house where I was told I'd never amount to anything. Where Mom used to scold me for wasting time, while praising Nathan for bringing honor to the family. Now it stood empty. Just another house with history no one wanted. Mia divorced Nathan within 3 months of the investigation closing. She left quietly, without a public statement, but I heard through mutual contacts that she was cooperating with prosecutors in exchange for immunity. Smart. She always was. As for me, I kept my job. I still deliver packages. Still start my mornings early and end them late. But people greet me differently now. Some of the same folks who once looked at me with pity now meet me with quiet respect. I'm not a hero. I didn't expose Nathan to make myself look good. I did it because I was tired of being silent. Tired of letting lies fester just to keep the peace. A few months ago, I got a letter from the company's interim board, a formal apology, and an invitation to join them as an external advisor. I declined, not out of bitterness, just clarity. I knew what kind of people built that company, what kind of rot had been allowed to settle in its foundation. I didn't want to be the one patching up holes in a structure I never believed in to begin with. Let them rebuild it from scratch, without me. Mom tried one final time to contact me. A typed letter, stiff and impersonal. She didn't mention the investigation or Nathan's arrest. She didn't acknowledge anything that had happened. All she wrote was, "This family has been through enough. You've made your point. Let's move on." I read it twice. Then I shredded it. There was no moving on. Not with people who had never once taken responsibility, who had spent years shaping me into a scapegoat while placing Nathan on a pedestal. No, they had chosen their path, and I had chosen mine. Now, I live in a quiet apartment on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, just a place that's mine. Peaceful. I see friends sometimes. I work. I keep to myself. I sleep well. And sometimes, when I drive by a house or business where someone's waiting for a package, I remember what it felt like to be looked down on by the people who were supposed to lift me up. But I'm not angry anymore. They lost everything trying to protect an illusion, and I found myself by tearing it down. Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts in the comments. If you like this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this.